Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the At Research webinar for today. It's a pleasure to have so many of you join us today from all around Australia. And of course, it's a great pleasure to be sharing more wonderful discussions about health services research. My name is Heather Cameron, and I'm the Program Manager for the Revitalise Project's Regional Research Teaching Hub. And of course, we're the hosts of the At Research website. To begin, on behalf of our team and everyone present today, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. I recognise their continuing connections to lands, waters and communities. I pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to elders past and present. And I extend a very warm welcome to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today, both in the audience and on the panel, or who are viewing the recorded webinar. I'm privileged to be joining you today from Geelong, which sits on the lands of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nations. Now, just some housekeeping before we start. Our team works remotely throughout Victoria, and this week we've been having all sorts of glitches with unstable internet connections. I'm not sure if it's the weather or if it's just gremlins, but it is a bit off-putting to find that some of us freezing in the middle of discussions. So hopefully there won't be any issues today, but if there is, I'm sure we'll all manage them, and I'm sure that you'll be patient with us. Now, there is a slight alteration to the advertised proceedings today, a good alteration. We're being joined by co-designers who have worked with Pauline and Stacey, our advertised presenters. So we're feeling really excited to have our additional guests joining us. The format of the webinar will firstly be a very brief presentation to introduce the project, and then a panel discussion that I'll lead with some questions, and then we'll wind up with time for questions from the floor. So please use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and pop your questions in throughout the webinar, and we'll endeavour to cover as many as we can. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to ask our panellists to join us on screen. Welcome into the webinar. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Now, before I introduce everyone, I'm going to invite Mel Sheldon to share an appreciation of lived experience.
Thank you, Heather. We would like to acknowledge the individual and collective experience of people with expertise, people with experience of ill health and recovery. We honour the courage of those who share their unique expertise of lived experience. We also appreciate continuing their contribution, a bit early for me. We also appreciate, we really do, their contribution as equal and active partners in the health system transformation. Thank you, Heather.
What a wonderful way to start this discussion today, Mel, and heartfelt support of that message of appreciation, because that's actually what we're all about, isn't it? That's what we're here for. So welcome to you and to all the panel members. Now, look, the resumes of the people on our screen they're just so outstanding that it's really hard to do them justice in my brief introductions. I really would encourage you to revisit the event on the At Research website and read more about each of our panellists, because the list of state and national organisations that they're involved in is considerable and well worth a good read. So to introduce everyone, I'll start with Mel, who you've met already. Mel's a Wemba woman living on Yorta Yorta country in Echuca, which means the meeting of the waters. She's a patient who has survived stage 4 melanoma, first diagnosed 16 years ago. She has a strong commitment to health equity for marginalised groups, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and rural communities. So welcome, Mel. Welcome to Navina Nikolapudi. Navina has lived expertise of early breast cancer and is passionate about improving the experience of future individuals diagnosed with cancer. She has particular interests in equity of care, health system navigation, maintaining patient quality of life, and the reduction of financial toxicity as a consequence of cancer treatments. So welcome, Navina.
Thank you, Heather.
And welcome to Steve Cavell. Steve is a business intelligence and enterprise reporting professional with 25 years of information technology experience. He's also involved in numerous health services projects in the role of the Consumer Lived Experience Advisor. Welcome to Pauline Ryan, who's the Program Manager for the statewide Consumer-Led Research Program, which is what we're here to talk about today. Welcome to Julie Paxino, who's a research fellow working in the consumer-led research. And I'd also make a warm welcome to Dr. Stacey Pinozo, who is in the backstage, but is not going to join us just at this stage because of that internet instability, but she is there and may pop in later. So welcome all. What an amazing group. When we first set out to plan this webinar, we weren't expecting such a wonderful response, both from all of you, but also from the audience. We've got a great audience out there today. So let's get the ball rolling, and I'm going to hand over to Steve and Pauline to provide us with an introduction and an overview of the project. Thank you.
You're expecting me, Paul? I think so.
You go for it, Steve.
Yeah, so the program started because people with lived experience of cancer, such as myself, were asking questions about, I guess, their involvement in research and in the health sector. So, for example, am I making a difference? I'm involved in this program wherever I happen to be, Peter MacCallum, somewhere else, Cancer Council. Is it making a difference? And then what do we know about consumers in health, whether that's in research or clinical care or education? What are the enablers and challenges that we as consumers face in that system? And do we understand what impact or influence we have in the sector, not only as individuals, but also from the organisations we're part of? Why are some organisations more receptive to consumer involvement than others? And do we know what is it that makes consumer engagement meaningful? And ultimately, what's the impact of, in fact, including consumers in the cancer sector? Next slide. So this inspired a program, Big Vision. It started off from the VCCC Alliance Consumer Advisory Committee, sort of with this sort of feedback of those previous questions. And our vision is to create a pathway to integrate meaningful lived experience across cancer. I think there's a lot of involvement of people with lived experience, but we want to make that meaningful. So we've established a statewide network of experienced leaders. We are establishing partnerships, not just between the 5 organisations that are part of this program, but beyond, because part of the program involved training consumer leaders, and we've been able to place those leaders in more organisations than the original 5 down the bottom of the screen there. We're building confidence and capability not only for the consumers, but for the people who engage with the consumers, so the researchers and the educators as well. And as well as creating and sharing consumer engagement tools and resources that we can set a standard across organisations for effective engagement.
Thank you so much, Steve. So, Steve really hit the nail on the head. This is really about a collective approach, collective impact. So it's about investment in people, and we've got lived experience really at the centre of that. And as you can see, there are 5 partner organisations involved in this collaborative project. So we've got VCCC Alliance, Monash Partners Comprehensive Cancer Consortium, we've got Regional Trials Network Victoria, Cancer Council Victoria, and also academic support from the University of Melbourne. And it's really about the investment, not only in the people, in the participants in the program or people as part of, I suppose, the program development, but it's also extended beyond that. So people involved in placements across various organisations that Steve sort of alluded to before. And we really are trying to focus on collaboration because we think, we are stronger together and we can do more to really have that collective impact of lived experience leadership across the sector. We believe that we can really influence the cancer sector with lived experience leadership. And that's why we've taken on this sector-wide approach. So it really is about these 5 different organisations collaborating and trying to influence, the cancer sector together with our lived experience leaders. And this is our underlying building blocks of the program itself. So we've got a lived experience governance model. So what that means is people with lived experience are driving the program. The balance of decision making and prioritization lies with lived experience perspective. We're focused on a common focus, and that includes lived experience leadership and really looking at how we can enable change and influence the sector. We're undergoing lived experience leadership research, and Julia will be able to talk a little bit more to that later, but we're actually trying to understand what does the literature tell us about consumer leadership or lived experience leadership in the health sector itself. We've been able to co-design an education course. So this is a leadership program for people. We've got our participants going through that at the moment. That includes online modules, in-person workshops, and a placement within different organisations doing a cancer-related project. So that leadership education course is a really key component of what we're doing, because what we want to see is that when we actually build capability and capacity in people with lived experience of cancer and then put them out in the cancer sector, can we actually have a positive influence on the sector itself? As Steve also talked about, we've developed a range of engagement resources, because what we do know is that it's really important for us to set the standard for effective engagement practices, because the way that people engage with consumers or people with lived experience really varies. So we're hoping to really just set the standard across these 5 partner organisations, but also hopefully beyond, so that we can really enable effective and meaningful engagement. And the other thing is we've got staff that are positioned in each of the 5 partner organisations. So we call them our backbone support. So this is a really key component of what we're trying to do, because we're really trying to make sure that we have this standard of collective expertise, but also engagement practices that are enabled across each of the 5 partner organisations, because that's obviously a really key component of making sure that we can implement this effectively. I'll hand back to you, Heather, and I'll show.
That's great. Goodness me, Steve and Pauline, what a lot of work's gone into the actual planning and the development in this project. As a project worker, I think one of the most important issues I come across is governance in projects. I'm wondering, Steve, could I ask you what governance processes have been implemented to ensure that this is truly a consumer-led initiative?
Yeah, sure. So that's actually my role. I'm on the steering committee, and the steering committee is made up of representatives from each of the 5 organisations, but there is 1 staff member and 2 lived experience members from each organisation. So, for example, I'm there as a representative of the Cancer Council, and we have another consumer from the Cancer Council, and then 1 staff member. So there's initially a ratio of 2 to 1 consumers to staff, if you like, employees. We recently added some people with domain expertise to add to that, but the terms of reference, which we took, I'm going to think about a year to develop, is highly focused on making sure there's a majority of consumers in everything we do. So the steering committee has a majority of consumers. All of the working groups are co-chaired and by consumers. The steering committee itself is chaired by consumers. Our quorum is, I can't remember the actual number, but the quorum also states that there always has to be a majority of consumers. So even if, like, 9 people turn up, but there's only 7 consumers, that's still not a meeting. So it's always been focused on the fact that there will be more consumers than anyone else. So the consumer's voice is heard first and foremost. So the idea is to sort of shift the balance of decision making towards people with lived experience or consumers. Funnily, I keep using those words interchangeably. We've had many hours of discussions at the steering committee as to what do we call ourselves. And I think that's a sign because, clinically people are referred to as consumers because it makes sense. That's what the health and research, organizations say. But people with lived experience of cancer sort of say, well, am I really a consumer, or is there more to that? So that was one of the things that that took a long time. The other thing we've implemented is we actually have a pre-meeting, if you like. So the consumer leaders have a meeting a week before the steering committee. So the 10 consumers who are people with lived experience. The only advantage of consumers is one word. Consumers. The 10 consumers meet prior to the main meeting to discuss the agenda and to say, what are we going to talk about? And not like we're trying to provide a, unified front as such, but such that we hear each other's experience and we amplify the experience of the consumers rather than being led, which has always been my experience in the past. You get involved in projects, but you often feel like you're an add-on going, oh, that's right, we're meant to have a consumer, aren't we? So we're trying to flip that on its head and make sure that the consumers come first.
That's just so exciting to hear. What a tremendous approach. That idea of having a majority of consumers or lived experience. That's just tremendous. One of the things that you touched on when you were giving us an overview of the program was the co-design aspect, and I'm wondering, perhaps Mel, as a co-designer, could you tell us why it's important for the program to have lived experience leaders designing and delivering the content?
I think as Steve mentioned, we have the 5 different partners, and the different consumers with lived experience, but also different leadership qualities. So getting everybody together, we not managed, but it took a long time, but we managed to form this co-design approach with also the Deakin University, who won the tender for the education project. And that was really good because once again, we have the balance of power, but we all have different experiences and different styles of leadership. One of the other, one of the little hurdles, or it took us a long time to decide on, was what is diversity? So that was an interesting thing because we all have different views of that. So we ended up coming to a term where we're saying, I'll actually display, I'm going early here, but basically intersectional diversity. For example, myself, I'm rural, I'm female, mild disability, Aboriginal woman, or I said root. So there's 4 intersections there, so to speak. And we had, we all came to that agreement at the end. It took a while, but that's what I actually love about this group, is that we do take our time because we all want to, at the end, put the best case forward, so to speak. It has, well, what do I say? The balance of power, which is what I think Steve was also saying. And the program itself has demonstrated its value already. So many people are interested in what we're doing and looking, even when we were doing recruitment, for example, to get on board. We have, in the education program, we have done online models, which were great. They came from the Deakin team, and then we would edit, so to speak. We would go over it, and that took a little while again because our voice, our experiences weren't actually reflected in that. So it's a roundtable discussion, but once again, we edited all of that, and then the education models truly reflected what consumers do, and diversity is one of them as well. We also had project placements, which was great. The intention there was to match the participants with their interest and then to a site. So we had 21 participants, one extra, but that's okay, and 10 mentors, and they went to 10 sites, and the peer engagement mentorship as well. And they had some education as well, so that then they can really support the participants and also the site. And we feel that will really work well. And as Pauline said earlier, it's already in action. And it's just great to see also in terms of diversity, we actually have more rural sites than we do metro. And as we all know, there's a real gap there in cancer survivorship, etc., and so yeah, it's actually great because we're actually more rural, regional than metro, and we hope this will help with leadership in those different sites. I think that's really all I can say about that one, Heather.
That's really great, Mel, and gosh, I really relate to that rural regional approach because obviously that's part of our remit as well. Look, sorry, you go.
I actually, myself, like I live regional, and what I have found is there's not as much understanding of what we can do as consumers, our input, and it's really important, this program with these participants, to push that and actually get results from that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, one of the other things that we do have in common is this interest in research. I mean, obviously we're at research. I'm wondering, and it's, I think I can guess what the answer is to this, but I'd really love to hear your perspectives, Navina and perhaps Julia. How could you comment on how lived experience expertise has enriched the research process?
Julia, do you want me to start?
You start and I'll add anything if. Yeah.
Sounds good. I guess you've heard both Steve and Mel talk about the involvement of lived experience right from the beginning, from the design of this statewide leadership program through to who's on the steering committee and through to who's actually co-chairing each of the streams. So each of the 3 streams have 2 consumer co-chairs or lived experience advisor co-chairs, whatever you want to call us. And we're supported by people like Pauline and Stacey, as well as Julia, who's going to be speaking in a minute. And so for us, it's around both through knowledge, but also through the way we've designed things, making sure that lived experience is front and center. Our project, our program, how you call it, our stream, as Steve mentioned, was around, and Paulina mentioned, is around consumer leadership in research. And we've done this a couple of different ways. So we started with a literature review and trying to understand what has already been mentioned out there in different academic papers about consumer leadership when it comes to healthcare and in particular cancer care. And then we're also doing a 3-stage interview process. So stage 1 is and this is with the group that's undergoing the education program. Stage 1 is before they start the education program. Stage 2 is during, and stage 3 is after, because we'd like to see if we're hoping, uptick in skills and knowledge level around what it takes to be someone with lived experience in research and how they're engaged with at the various sites. I think the critical thing around this project is that the demands for researchers to have consumers has been growing. So initially, I think they used to only say you need to have 1 consumer. Now it's up to 2 to 3. And their funding is dependent on that. So because of that, we're getting this huge wave of demand, but we haven't had enough consumers to supply, because it's been seen as a little bit of a niche to date. Consumers feel not only vulnerable, but scared, apprehensive, because they go, I don't know anything about science. I don't know anything about research. What contribution can I possibly provide? And on the flip side, the researchers haven't known where to go to find these consumers. You know, we're not sitting on street corners or growing on trees. So they tend to use the same people over and over again, or share the same consumer with their colleagues. So all of a sudden, these consumers are getting overwhelmed because they, having to participate on multiple research projects. So for me, this program is absolutely critical in building that resource base, but also helping researchers find us once we have trained consumers up. I think I've covered some of the stuff you asked for, Heather.
That's
Julia,
great. Yeah.
I'll hand over to Julia just for her, because she does a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. She's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Navina. Well, I guess from a researcher perspective, the participating in this work has really shifted my mindset about how, approaching work collaboratively and in partnership with people. And I see my work very much as to be a guide. So to actually share the research expertise with the broader group, which involves people with lived experience and some content knowledge experts about where we are up to in the process, and guide people to feel comfortable with the decisions we need to make to move forward, and then support people to make informed decisions, I guess, because I think, as Navina said, people in the project there's a range of research expertise already in the group. So it's about actually not making everyone an expert in research. I'm there as a research fellow to be making sure we attend to specific research, rules and regulations and expectations, but actually to harness and I guess to help people see where their contribution is so valuable, and to help that shine through and help people make those decisions rather than me making a decision and informing the group. It's the other way around. And I think it's just really shifted my mindset, definitely. And also there's such I would say this multi-directional learning, because it's not just that I'm imparting knowledge, like research knowledge, onto the group. It's actually us all coming together, sharing knowledge, and then the people making the decision about how we move forward with the research.
Heather,
Gosh, that's just
if I may just add to what Julia said, a couple of things. I think the program has been set up for success because of the resourcing that's been made available to us. Whether that's Julia or Pauline and Stacey, it helps support us and makes our lives a lot easier so that we can focus on the delivery of the question, depending on what stream you're in. We also have about 10 lived experience experts, advisors, consumers in the stream. And on top of that, right from the beginning, we kind of did a RACI matrix so that we understood our roles and our responsibilities, and at what stage we will be informed, or we collaborate, or we're responsible. So it actually helped with role clarity in the program as well. So I just wanted to add that as a base to how we're being set up for success, so that we can actually do what we were actually originally designed to do.
That's really interesting. One of the things that strikes me that a few of you have mentioned is the diversity and skill level, the diversity and experience. And we all know that cancer isn't one disease. It's many diseases, comes in many forms, and people are very different in the way that they experience living with cancer. I'm just wondering, Mel, you mentioned diversity. How has this How has this project ensured that you've gotten a breadth of experience and not just those one or two consumers that Navina talked about that often get overused by services?
It was really intentional recruitment from the very, very beginning, and with the partnership organisations on who their two consumers were. So you mentioned there are different cancers. That's another intersectional, like something different again. So with our steering group, our consumer group, there's a real breadth of different experiences. And you don't even necessarily have to be the patient, as we know consumers are caregivers, etc. So it's really about the intentional recruitment of that. And that went right down then to the program working groups, and what we included in our governance. We were very, I keep saying intentional. And even the RACI metrics that Navina mentioned, that was really interesting in terms of each of the roles, each of the check marks that we had to do, who is responsible for that and who is accountable, who's consulting and who is informed. We had, with the backup with like Julia, etc., we had that then marked as what we had to do and what was supported. And one of the things was definitely diversity. And that really did work, I think, because we also sent out, when it came to the next phase where we're recruiting the participants and the mentors, each of the organisations went out and came in with candidates, and then the steering group voted on who they thought would work well. There's also the interview process as well, but it wasn't just, shall I say, expression of interest. It was also, we had a lot of expressions of interest. And I think Navina was talking to the over interest, where we actually created another group off to the side, and they were fabulous people with so much knowledge. But we can draw upon them when it comes to reviewing and things like that. They have fresh eyes because they're not in the midst of it doing everything. And that's one of the, I would say, the successes of this program, and that will not only help support this one, but nearly like spread the word. So, you know, our next iteration could be bigger rather than 21 participants, the 10 sites, but the next iteration can be bigger, obviously with our learnings and our successes. And I think that's what we're aiming for, you know, it's engagement with all and making sure they're the right people. The thing I do love is that we're matching the participants' interest with the sites and also the mentors. So they're fully supported and more likely to have success in an area that they are interested in.
Tremendous. Look, I'm really conscious of the time, and I want to know, you talked there, Mel, about the next step. Can I ask very quickly, Pauline, perhaps Navina, what is the next step? I see we've got a few questions in the Q&A. So if you could just speak for a little bit about what the next steps are, and then we could go to the questions.
Sorry, Heather, I was waiting for Pauline to come in. Pauline,
Yeah,
You go
leaving you to
first.
handle that one.
Okay. Look, it's a really great question. And I think one of the things that we're really excited about is that there's over 60 people with lived experience involved in this program across all the different aspects. So what we have seen is that, look, and what we do know is we think there's transferability of what this program is. This is our first iteration of the leadership program itself. So a really important part of that, along with the research component of what, you know, Julia and Navina are involved with, is actually also the evaluation of the co-design process and the leadership program itself. So we're sort of nearly hitting the 2-year mark. So 2 years in December is when the funding initially started. So we're really working around how this can sort of look from a next iteration. And I think one of the beauties of this program is, and it has truly been something that has been led by people with lived experience at all aspects of it. And because of that richness, we have such a great program, and we think, look, potentially is scope for this beyond cancer. National scope is another thing we've also had conversations about. And we also really think that, there clearly is an appetite for this. And so we really want to look at, I suppose, how we can engage, the sector to meaningfully and strategically look at how we can sort of advance, a lot of the work that's gone on in this program, because we've got not only the leadership program, we've got, quite a lot of engagement practices, resources that will be housed on our webpage. We've got all this, research collateral that Julia's put together. So, there's more for us to do, we think. And we think, lived experience leadership is really, it's a changing way to do a program. And it can be, I wouldn't say challenging, it's possibly one of the most beneficial ways to go about any program that I've been involved with. So I think it's actually the future of how, health, the sector needs to actually go. That was not quick, I apologise, but I get really excited when I talk about this program.
Yeah, I can understand that. Navina, did you want to add anything?
I was also going to say, we have to have like a dual vision on this. One, we have to keep the eye on the ball that we're bouncing right now, and also lift up and look at the future, which is what Pauline spoke about, because how do we then keep this going in the longer term, and, making sure that we build on what this fantastic program of work that we've created. But in the first instance, we still have to finish our homework, which is, Julia's just finished doing the literature review and, reviewing all the different articles to then condense them to the ones that are meaningful. And then we're going to have a workshop with the stream participants to tease out some of that information, but also kind of try and finalize things, because we're hoping to, publish this information as a research study in a sense. So, there's still, and the education programs only recently started. So, they still have a while to go before they finish their program and they're doing their placements and so on. So it's a dual a dual vision at the moment of the future, the immediate and then the longer term.
Sure. That's great. Look, we've got some really interesting questions coming from our audience, and I'm just going to throw this open to who would like to comment. From Terry, very gratifying to see this work happening. Have evaluation indicators and processes been co-designed? Good question, Terry. Who would like to respond?
Yeah, I was going to say, so yeah, definitely. I mean, Julia might be good to talk to that one as well, but I wouldn't say just co-design, I'd actually say consumer-led. So we've identified through using the RACI tool, where are the opportunities to actually have the lived experience expertise to actually inform the evaluation. So yeah, we're really proud of our approach that's kind of gone one level up from partnership.
And that's really helpful, Pauline, because another comment or question from Sarah is about the RACI tool. Could you please, Navina mentioned it, could you please expand on this tool? And if anyone is able to provide a link in the chat, perhaps to the tool, it's certainly one that I'm going to look up and pop up on the @Research website. But Navina, could you expand on it?
Absolutely. And I think Mel also touched upon it
Yes,
after I'd
yes.
mentioned it, but it basically is a matrix. And what you do is around the top, you put down responsible, is R, A is for accountable, C is for consulted, and I is for informed. And as you're going through projects or initiatives or whatever it is, or programs like this, you can go through the stages and you can say, okay, I'll pick the literature review, for example. Julia was responsible for doing it and accountable. And the group, the project team or the program group, the stream, trying to find the right word for us, were consulted about some of the search terms, but then we were informed by Julia about how she'd gone, like, how the results of the review itself. So there'll be times where the roles switch around, and it just depends on the stage and the individuals involved in it in a program of work as to who's responsible for what and who's accountable and so on. And you can use this at work, like even in, and I used to work in corporates. We used to use the RACI matrix for doing, project management and things like that. So hopefully that's answered Sarah's question.
Yeah, no, that's great, Navina. And I see that Mel and Pauline have both put some information in the chat, so please access that. A couple of other things that have come up in the Q&A from the audience. Dana's actually commented, I'm incredibly proud to see this program thriving. Could you please reflect on what has been the most beneficial and challenging aspects of implementing a collaborative program across 5 organisations rather than a single organisation? Good question.
I feel like Pauline may be the best person in many ways to answer this, but I'll just quickly say that for us consumers or lived experience, we all had different levels of education or ideas of what leadership was. So we had working groups together and we worked together to come to definitions, for example, or what we needed to do. And we had training sessions, which was great. So, Pauline, thank you.
Great. And yeah, just to acknowledge Dana and her leadership in this, getting this program off the ground as well. Yeah, look, it's a really great question. And I think, as you could probably know, I think, getting 5 organisations together, a lot of people will probably think it's super challenging, but I think from my respect, it actually wasn't as difficult as potentially some collaborative partnerships are, because this is actually consumer-led and because we have a common focus, and it's been something that has really united the group. And I think when we've had, conversations or, there's been, different suggestions of how to approach things, because we've actually had the balance of decision-making line with the consumer perspective, it's really, really centred everyone back to what it is we're trying to do. And I really congratulate the partners on that, because I think it's really demonstrating leadership in their organisations to actually commit to this way of working. I think, as you could probably tell, different organisations have different governance processes to go through. So sometimes those things can be a little bit tricky when, you've got to sort of, implement something within your own organisation. But at the same time, I think because we have this common focus and we really are focused, I suppose, on that collective impact of lived experience leadership, it actually hasn't been as potentially difficult as, people might expect.
That's interesting, yes. Any other comments from anyone around that question?
Yeah, I'll just say from a steering committee perspective, it's been interesting. And as I get partly because there are more people with lived experience than employees, if you like. The domination is the partner organisations just need to sort of follow the trend to an extent. And so it's been interesting to watch that. But as Pauline said, it's been very much a cooperative approach. There doesn't appear to be any competition. Nobody wants to be the boss, because I think they accept that the people with lived experience are the boss, and they're there to provide the support. So it's been, I mean, from my perspective, as I said, I was sort of nominated by the Cancer Council, but I also do work for the research, what's it called? RTN-Vic.
Yes.
the Regional Trials Network. And in Peter MacCallum is where I do, which is part of the VCCC Alliances, is where I do all my research sort of consumer input. So, I'm involved in a large number of those organisations already. So it's been from a steering committee perspective to watch, it's been, I haven't sort of, there's been very small number of occasions when things might have been a bit difficult.
Yeah. Look, I think it's just demonstrating this incredible ability of to collaborate and the richness that comes out of collaboration. It's wonderful to see services doing that. One of the next questions is a comment from Giselle about the leadership course sounds wonderful. Would that be deployed across the country at some stage, if not already?
I can quickly jump in. Look, so it is a pilot at the moment. So we, like with all good things, they're actually going to do our evaluation, actually look at, I suppose, how we can implement and improve beyond the pilot process. But, that is something around, from a sustainability perspective, we obviously would need funding to go into the, a national scope.
Yes. I noticed that one of the questions, and I noticed that Mel's answered it, but there may be others who would like to know, what about remuneration for our lived experience co-designers? How do you manage that? Probably, would it be Pauline that would answer that?
Oh, yeah, it would. Yeah, sorry. So look, we're really proud that the program was funded with the intention to make sure that remuneration was offered to everyone with lived experience that are taking part in it. So we have adopted the VCCC consumer engagement remuneration model. So if anyone, I can pop a link into that if you wanted to have a look. And so the project coordinators within the different partner sites and myself. We actually carry the burden of making sure that we log when people are, doing an activity, whether it's for research, whether it's for co-design, whether it's for, designing engagement practices, and we actually then process the remuneration on their behalf. So it is offered, it's voluntary, but it is a really sort of key part, I think, of acknowledging the expertise of people that are contributing to this program.
That's great.
And it's, I will say it's very seamless. Thank you, Pauline. As a consumer, you sort of get a report at the end of the quarter that says, is this what you went? And you go, yep, and send it back. That's it. The amount of effort compared to some other projects where you're going, you've got to track your own time, and I can't be bothered. So it's been.
Could I just say Navina has a great way of explaining why consumers should be or could be remunerated? Can you share
Please
that,
do.
Navina?
You're talking about the yes, okay. Really briefly, many years ago, I went to Africa, and I know that people are going, "What does that have to do with consumer leadership?" But just bear with me. And I went to a cheetah conservation place, and what happened was that cheetahs come during the daytime, and the farmers who go out and see their livestock dead, not realizing that the leopards have killed them in the night, blame the cheetahs in the morning, and were killing the cheetahs. So one of the things that the conservation place came up with was to put puppies, like have dogs in with the livestock, because cheetahs are actually quite timid and they don't like anything similar size. And because they were giving them away for free, the farmers weren't putting any value on these puppies and kind of mistreating them, but ignoring them, and not really looking after them. So then the conservation people started charging a nominal fee for the puppies, and all of a sudden the puppies were being treated like little kings, because they had to pay for them, and they were worth something. And I know people will go, "Oh, you're comparing us to dogs," but that's not the point. It's around the fact that people often associate value with something that's paid. And also, if you actually had to pay us as consultants, when you think about it, it would cost a lot of money. So the fact that we're giving this stuff away for free, I think shouldn't be taken advantage of. And I think people should be remunerated for the effort that they're putting in. So, because, a lot of us are working part-time or not working at all, or having to take time off work, often unpaid. So, a little bit of payment is much appreciated.
That's a wonderful answer, Lavina, and of course it speaks to that issue of toxicity of cancer treatment, doesn't it? That, goodness me, you people with lived experience, let's not forget that you're here because of that awful cancer diagnosis, and you're here because of what you've been through. And gosh, what a wonderful way to acknowledge that, to remunerate you for being at the forefront of this project. I'm going to practice saying consumer-led from now on instead of co-design. I mean, co-design, of course, is a methodology and it's very important, but I really do like that idea of lived experience, living experience, consumer-led processes, because goodness, you've all demonstrated the richness of that today. We're going to wind up shortly. I'd just like to take a moment to go around each of you and just ask you what's the highlight for you of being involved in this project, whether you're the program manager, the research fellow, the lived experience person in the governance part or the education part, whatever you do, what is the highlight for you of being involved in this project? Can I go around my screen? I'll start with Julia.
Oh, thank you. I would say the learning opportunity that it has afforded me and just the shift in perspective. It's almost like once the blinkers are off, you can't really go back to another way of working. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I've had working on this project to, yeah, shift that perspective for me.
Wonderful. About you, Mel?
I think it's amazing that so many people have come together for a common purpose, which Pauline was saying. But I also love the fact that this gives the opportunity for the unheard voices to learn and be able to influence healthcare. I think that's what I love so much about it.
Beautiful. Navina.
It's so many. Heather, it's hard to pick one, but it's been great to work with a group of like-minded consumers with the same passion and enthusiasm for making a difference. And also for me, like, to see the government willing to invest in this program to develop these skills because they are important for the future of healthcare.
Real partnerships. That's wonderful. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, look, I'd say maybe it's not a highlight, but the thing that stands out the most to me is the amount of work that's actually been done. As I said earlier on, my involvement is limited to the steering group. Early on, they said, who wants to be on all these working groups? And I said, well, I've got, treatment side effects that make it a bit difficult, but I'm happy to stay there. And so I turn up to like a quarterly meeting and just blown away by the amount of work that's happened. In a lot of cases by, people with lived experience. Yeah, sure, there's some employee input there, people who are like, paid to do stuff, but the amount of work that people have done, I'm impressed by it. And the number of people, I think Pauline said 60. And I remember the first meeting I came to, I was a bit late in, but was sort of sometime early last year, and it was just the sort of 9 or 10 of us going, what are we going to do? We got all this money from the government. What are we going to do? And it's just grown, and it's so, thanks to Pauline in a lot of cases, but also to all the people with lived experience. It's just been, it's been so rewarding to see the amount of people throwing themselves into it and getting so much done. I used to work in IT, I think you mentioned, and like, man, project teams, and if anyone worked in IT, you'd go to meetings month after month. Nothing ever happens. Nothing's ever delivered. So it was great to see.
That's wonderful. Look, I agree. I feel humbled by the extent of the contributions from everybody. Pauline, what about you?
Oh, so many. But I
Yeah.
suppose a recent highlight was we had a showcase 2 weeks ago, and we had the participants in the leadership program lead from lived experience, plus mentors, plus the supervisors, where the participants are going to go do their projects across the sector. And it was just a highlight to have people in the room, and you could just feel the energy and the passion. It was hybrid, actually, so you could even online, it was just, there was so much engagement. And I think for me, just reflecting on even what people have said, like the collaborative nature, the common focus is just, incredible, and a real privilege.
So true, so true. And look, as a participant, as an organisation that has a wonderful lived experience person joining us on placement, I agree. As someone who's been in the health services for well over 30 years, I'm a bit like Julia. I'm kind of going, oh, there's actually quite a bit here for me to learn, and I'm very excited about it. As are a lot of our audience. I've got some comments coming into the Q&A. Comment from Ashley, super inspiring and informative discussion. Thank you to everyone involved. I'm excited to see this program's progression and future. And a comment from Terry, acknowledging that the mental health sector has for 30 years worked to employ people with lived experience in improving the mental health sector. The cancer sector has led the way in consumer leadership and engagement, and she likes that idea of consumer-led instead of co-design as well. So what a wonderful group, and thank you so much. I feel like we have given you such a small amount of time to share this vast project that you're all involved in, but hopefully we can have you back. Hopefully we can continue to work with you. I will remind everyone that there are consumer engagement resources on the @Research website, but I suspect I'm going to go and find a whole lot more now that I've got these wonderful people that I can touch base with. And if there's anything in today that you would like to discuss further or you want more information, then please click contact us on the @Research website and we will put you in touch with people. Or I'll just share this with you. If you would like to complete the evaluation, there's also a space on the evaluation for you. You can either use this QR code or it will be sent to you in an email post the webinar. But if there's anything at all you would like to know more about, please let us know. Now, I would just like to conclude by thanking our panelists very much. It has been an outstanding webinar and I've thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. And my hat goes off to all of you, working hard, contributing in ways that are innovative and leading us to a nationwide approach that's going to be very, very useful in the cancer and the wider healthcare field. So thank you very much, everyone. I'd like to thank the audience as well and say we look forward to seeing you all again in our next webinar. In the meantime, keep safe, everyone, and all the best. Thank you.